Hi everyone, this is Lokesh from the Soul Freedom Show and Radical Purpose Coaching, and we have a very special guest today, Morgan Smith, all the way from Canada. Hi Morgan, how are you doing?
I'm good. How you doing, brother?
Good, good. Thank you for joining. And yeah, we connected last week, and I was really impressed by your background and your awakening, and then the work that you do and the services that you offer. So why don't
Thank
we
you.
just, yeah, why don't we just start from there? I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Oh, well, my name is Morgan O. Smith, and I'm a spiritual teacher, brainwave entrainment facilitator, neurofeedback practitioner, neurofeedback training practitioner, author, um, youth worker. Well, the list goes on. There's a bunch of titles I have. I get bored, so I'm always dabbling in different projects and things of that sort. But mainly spiritual teacher, philosopher, Eastern philosophy, non-duality, and yeah, former stand-up comedian, former TV show host, and the list goes on. Yeah,
Great, great. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you who are your role models because, like in comedy, we were talking about Russell Peters earlier. I don't know if he's your role model, but in general,
yeah,
in
it's one of my role models. Oh yeah.
spirituality, like in spirituality or in life in general, like who have been your role models?
In regards to spirituality, there's a lot of people for different reasons, of course. There's Muji, there's Osho, there's Ken Wilber,
Mm,
um, just to name a few. Yeah, some of those people. Many other people, and many spiritual people and philosophers have played a role in my life. Um,
great.
I don't tend to follow all of them to that degree anymore, except for I did a lot of courses with Ken Wilber. So
Mm,
uh, I just finished doing some training with his group. What was
mm,
it? Almost a year ago now. Probably almost
mm,
a year ago now. So I did some work there, of course, and yeah, the
mm,
list goes on. I was also used to meditate with the late the controversial Andrew Cohen for a number of years. So
mm.
yeah, um,
Why was
as
it
much as of all the
controversial?
stuff that went down.
Why was it
Well,
so?
people would have to look into that. If I jumped into that, it would take hours in
Wow.
regards to his life. But his last few years of life, I spent a lot of time meditating with him virtually, and
Mm,
we had a lot of great times. Just from our virtual conversations and his take on spirituality and non-dual suchness. So even Andrew Cohen, as much as people have their opinions and their thoughts and they're legitimate, I've had my encounter with Andrew Cohen was very positive, and
mm,
it was great to, even though I've never really went for him for answers, but
mm.
I'm always curious about people's take and perspective on the same subject. So I would pick his brain a lot. So he was open and welcome to doing that on a regular basis. And unfortunately, the last few months of his life, I haven't attended his meditation sessions. So when I got the news that he passed, um, yeah, I was pretty broken from that. So yeah.
Mm.
So the list goes on with all the different people. If out of all the people, I probably had the most contact with Andrew.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
So
with Ken
for
Wilber as well, but Ken Wilber's stuff was more indirect.
uh,
But directly, I probably spent more time with Andrew Cohen than any other spiritual teacher.
I see, I see. So yeah, I wanted to understand like how did you move from like you were doing comedy and some other things before that? Like what was your major shift in your life that made you move away from that towards like brainwave entrainment and stuff like that?
Well, I was in music first before I got into stand-up comedy. I was a singer, songwriter, music producer. So that's what where I was in, and things happened within that industry that affected me negatively. So got caught up in bad contracts and that sort of thing. Not
Mhm.
that I regret it or anything like that. There was a lot of great moments that shaped the person who I am today. But after that, I wanted to go into something else. And so I ended up going to, I have a whole story of how I got into stand up comedy. That would take too much time, but I ended up going into stand up comedy. And I did that for some time. This is where I met Russell Peters and a whole bunch of people, Tommy Davidson and uh, um, gosh, all the people like Jamie Foxx and Kevin Hart and Dave Chappelle. And that's where I met all these guys. Um, even spoken to Rogan a few times, but I've never met him in person. But went into comedy. Short time later, maybe 2.5 years later, maybe 2 years later, I moved into TV, into television, and I became a television TV show host for nine of those years. So I did stand up comedy for 12 years, and I did television 9 of those 12 years. Had a lot of success in that area and on TV, and yeah, one of the biggest TV shows, cult following shows in Canada.
Mm.
Uh, I think that's what did it, really. After being in TV and stand up comedy for so long, as much as I was satisfied doing it, there was something that just wasn't filled. So
Mm.
there was a friend of mine, one of my best friends. We were hanging out. This came up a number of times where she offered, "Hey, one day you should try shrooms or something." And I was always against it, so I was never for it. So every time she brought it up, and she wasn't the only one. There was other people within my circle who brought up, "Hey, one day you should try shrooms or E or something." And I was just like, "No, I'm just not into that." I was
Mm.
never because I'm not even a drinker. So when those conversations came up, I always chose to ignore them. But one day, out of hitting a crossroads and was trying to figure out what was going on with myself and what I wanted to fulfill because I didn't know what it was at the time. She offered again. She says, "Hey, I got some shrooms. I think you should try it. I think you'd like the experience." And so I said, "Okay." So one day I tried it for the very first time, and my very first time of trying it, I had a spiritual experience that was it was so mind blowing. Um,
Mm.
Nothing compared to what happened after that, but for the beginning stages,
Mm.
that really did it for me, and
Mm.
it changed the way how I was thinking at the time. I started to question a lot of things that were beyond my knowledge and beyond the knowledge of the people within my circle. And at some point, I have another friend. All these people that I'm mentioning are people in the industry, in the entertainment industry. So another friend of mine introduced to me hypnotherapy.
Mhm.
So I believe I tried the shrooms first, and then after talking to my other friend, she recommended hypnotherapy. So I went and I found a hypnotherapist, did some hypnotherapy sessions, and a lot of incredible things happened out of that. To these light and sound machines that they were using. This is how I got the whole. I jumped onto the whole sound
Brain.
brainwave entrainment thing. It was through
Yeah.
these light and sound machines that they were using, and I found them so fascinating because when I used them, it made me more creative. I was able to come up with more jokes, and I was able to craft bits better, and I was able to look at jokes from a whole different standpoint that I wasn't looking at before. It opened up my mind. I was able to improv a lot better on stage. I can improv on stage for 45 minutes without even telling a single written piece of material. All these things came out of these light
Just
and sound machines.
just one time? You mean just after one session or more than one?
Oh no! With these sessions, it was a number of sessions. It was a few sessions where I started to break through.
Ah.
But I probably did 12 sessions with the organization. Yeah, probably
Mm.
about 12 sessions I did with the organization. I bought my own light and sound machines at this point. I bought two of them. I bought one for myself and one for my friend, the original friend who introduced me to shrooms. So
Mm.
we started doing these light and sound machine sessions on our own outside of my hypnotherapy sessions. And
Wow.
that's when all the other stuff started happening and started getting much more creative. Was able to mind map better and come up with creative ideas, all that type of stuff. Wake up 2 o'clock in the morning with fresh ideas and all that stuff. It was fascinating. After a while, I wanted to see if there was anything stronger than that. So
Mm.
for some reason, I started looking into meditation. So I went online and I wanted to see if they had anything of that sort of technology that was um, that was related to meditation. Because
Mm.
the light and sound machines that I had, they had meditation sessions on there, and I remember doing some of these sessions, and I remember how I felt using them. I felt amazing, doing some of these sessions on the light and sound devices. So I started looking to anything that was stronger in regards to meditation, and I found this one company, and they made these claims about what their meditation can do through these low carrier frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to order their sample,
Mm-hmm.
tried their sample, didn't think much of it. So, but I was intrigued enough to order their course. So I ordered their course came in, and that's when it blew my mind. Very first day I put it on, it blew my mind. Top of my
Which
head
one was
started.
it? Do you mind sharing the name of that company or?
I'd love to, but it's like we're in competition, so I at this point, so
Ah,
I
okay.
try to keep it away. All right,
Oh,
so I don't want to
because
promote other companies when yeah, you know what I mean. So,
you're working with another company now, right?
well, no, I have my own, so yeah, so I'm trying to,
Oh, you make your own products? Oh,
yeah.
okay. I didn't
What do
know
you
that.
mean? You bought a product. You bought
No,
my
no,
program.
no. I mean, I'm talking about. So one is the music, right? The other is the machine. I don't the headset. I thought you were talking about the headset.
No, no, you're talking about neurofeedback,
Yeah, yeah. You said that you bought a light and sound machine, right? Which can
light sound machine. Yeah,
is that
yeah,
what
light
you
sound
also
machine.
make? Right. Currently, you make that.
No,
Okay,
no,
that's
no,
what I
I don't
was.
make light sound machines. No, no,
You make the
no.
music
So my
and
bad.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't make loud sound machines. That's a separate thing. So when I started looking to low carrier frequency brainwave entrainment, they don't use light and sound machines. It's all on CDs at the time.
Ah, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, those
Understood.
are on CDs. So you just put that in the CD player. Back in the day, anyway, when we were using CDs, you put that in the CD player. You put on your headphones and you meditate for
So
an
it's
hour.
similar to
Yeah,
what Munro Institute, the HemiSync and all that, similar to
that's
that.
right.
Okay, okay, got it.
Very
Yeah.
similar to that. Yeah,
Okay.
very similar to that. Hemisync is actually the originators of this brainwave entrainment movement. So
Okay.
where was I? I got the product, started using it, and immediately I was I was blown away by the product. To make a long story short, I started doing this stuff every day. So
Mhm.
even till now, because this was 22 years ago. So even until now, I haven't missed a day of doing low carrier frequency brainwave entrainment. I've done it every single day for an hour for over 22 years. So at that time, starting out, I started getting all these results, positive and negative. A lot of things came out of me that I wasn't expecting, that I wasn't ready for. I had to address my own fears, my own anxieties, my own shadows. All that stuff started coming up to the surface.
Mhm.
And I had to address those issues. And I was still doing stand up at the time. And it just came to a point where so many things changed that I didn't have a desire to do stand up anymore. The good thing is my show was coming to an end. So they were in our second last season at this point. So now we're in our last season and we're wrapping up. And that's when I decided to take some time off. And this is where I continue doing my meditation practice every single day, which until this very day. So I was planning on taking 2 years off from the industry. Well, I didn't plan it that way. It just turned out that way. And so I was doing my practice every single day, writing down the results and stuff that I was getting out of it. And then
Mhm.
afterwards, something just happened where there was a number of events that took place, and I ended up in the nonprofit profit sector. So this
Mhm.
is back in 2006. Ended up in the nonprofit sector, and I just got carried away in the nonprofit sector while I'm still doing my meditation and things of that sort. So while I'm working in nonprofit, um, there was an employee, a colleague of mine who I met through at my job. Now that I'm in the nonprofit sector, and he introduced me to. He wanted me to MC at an event that he was doing. He had his own organization outside of the organization that we're working at. So he had a grassroots organization, and he wanted me to MC at his grassroots organization because he knows me as a stand up, as a TV show host and stand up. So I agreed to do it. So I went to do his event, and I met this guy at this event. He came off like this enlightened being type of guy. I didn't know what enlightenment was or anything like that, but it was a spiritual guy that walked in the room. Black gentleman. He had long dreadlocks. He was probably wearing sandals. In my mind, he was barefoot, but like he was probably wearing sandals or something. And he just had a thing about him. And I was like, who is that guy? So I remember saying to another person at the event, I said, who is that guy? He goes, oh, yeah, that guy's on a whole different tip. He's on a whole different level. I was like, what do you mean he's on a whole different level? He's like, spiritually, he's just on this different tip. And I went, Oh, okay. So at one moment, I can't remember if it was intermission or if it was lunchtime or if it was the end of the event. I went. He was speaking. So he gathered a group of people and he was talking about some guy named Osho.
Mm,
So he's talking about this guy Osho, this spiritual guru. And so I was listening, and he said a quote about something. He said he made a quote that was in the book that he mentioned out loud, and that caught my attention.
mm,
So I asked him questions about the quote that he made in regards to what Osho was saying, and I asked him a little bit about Osho, and he gave me a little bit of information about the guy. So after that event, I went home. I started looking up Osho. I started watching his videos on YouTube. I started looking up some of his documentation. I started reading that stuff, and I said, whatever that thing is that Osho's talking about, I want that. I just knew that I wanted that.
oh,
So that became my focus. I was like, whatever it is that Osho's talking about, that's what I want. So
yeah.
I put my focus towards that. So this was in 2006. So I
Mm,
kept on doing that while I was doing my meditation practice. At
mm,
this point, actually, prior to even me working in nonprofit, I would just want to make this point. I'm going to backtrack a little bit.
mm,
I came up with this idea with brainwave entrainment. What would happen based on my experience with shrooms with my friend? What would happen if I combined psychedelics with neurofeedback? Sorry, not neurofeedback. I didn't know anything about neurofeedback training yet. If I combined psychedelics with brainwave entrainment,
yeah.
and that's when so I started running these experiments with the same friend of mine. First, we didn't have any more psilocybin, but we were experimenting with marijuana. So
Mm,
she brought some marijuana cookies, and
mm,
I tried to see what would happen if I ate the marijuana cookies, start to get a trip, and put on the headphones and listen to the low carrier frequency brainwave entrainment, and it blew my mind. So I knew there was a difference because I did marijuana a few times, and so I knew the difference. There was a significant difference from using the brainwave entrainment with eating these cookies. So I said, what would happen if we did that with psilocybin? All right.
yeah.
So we tried it. Blew my mind. So at this point now, once in a while, once in the blue moon, I would try the two together. And I realized how much deeper it was when I did the two together, as opposed to doing brainwave entrainment or doing psilocybin or any type of psychedelic on its own. So I started to combine the two and whatever.
Okay,
So
I want
now
to,
I'm meeting.
sorry,
No, go
just
ahead. Go
want
ahead.
to interject a little bit. Just for the audience, like when you say like blew your mind, so I want to understand because for different people, they experience these things in different ways. Uh, like for some people, it's visual, sacred geometry and all that stuff. For some people, it's auditory, they hear sounds or channeling or whatever. What was the experience like for you?
We're going back so many years. Some of it I can't explain. I wouldn't know what category to put it in. I would say that there were peak experience that include visuals, auditory, um, also type of sensations, things that involved probably all six senses or all five senses. A lot of them were visual. So that during that time, I had encounters with different types of beings and things of that sort. Um, Channeling in a way, yeah, to some degree. Um, a lot of extraordinary things came out of that where it was a lot of encounters with different types of subtle type beings. Information, messages to pass on to other people, things of that sort. Um,
So what was the main message? Because I think,
Reptilians.
yeah, I think
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, at least based on my experience, because I've also done like DMT, ayahuasca, mushroom, all kind of things. So, at least from my experience, what I noticed is that it for me it didn't really matter, as in whether it's visual or auditory. What mattered for me was what was the message. Like, if I'm afraid of something, do I
Mhm.
face it? How do I face it? Or if it's an interaction, I'm asking for strength to face it, like those kind of things. It's more like, and also emotions for me, it was a lot of emotions coming out through like crying. Most for me it was a lot of crying and also purging, like vomiting. So what I want to understand from you is like, what was the main message that you got from your interactions with these beings or these plants?
I can't say there were any messages. If they did, I didn't take that in. I never cared about messages or if they had a message to give me, but I never got that sense of any messages. It was just more of learning aspects of myself, if anything, internally, subtle bodies, things of that sort. But messages, even now, I don't even look for those type of things. I never look for messages. So I can't say that I can't report anything like that. But it was more of discovery, if anything. That's probably more of a better word, discovery or realizations
Yeah, I
of the
mean,
subtleness of your own being. Yeah, I would say that.
yeah, yeah. So after that, like, one more thing I want to understand is like, did you, at what point did you stop? You said you stopped after a while. At what point did you think that I don't need those experiences with the medicine anymore? And then you just,
Oh, I'm not even there yet. I'm not even there yet. I dealt with medicines for a very, very long time. So I've
you
only stopped doing the
still
medicines like 5 years
do
ago.
like, you
Yeah,
still,
so in this point I'm still doing medicines.
okay, so what is the frequency that you follow? Like, or is it frequent or, I mean, at this
The
point,
frequency that
are
I
you,
follow.
yeah, as in
Hmm.
like, how frequently do you do the medicine?
Oh, did I do the medicine with the brainwave entrainment? It
No,
could
no,
have
not the
been at the
brainwave. I'm
time.
talking about the plant medicine and things like that. Did you stop or are you still doing the plant medicine?
I haven't done those things in like 5 years. Yeah, I
Yeah,
haven't.
yeah,
After my last breakthrough, haven't really touched those things.
yeah.
Well,
That's what I was asking.
I have tried to see if certain things would happen, which they didn't. So I shouldn't say that I didn't. But it's such a long story. I can't jump to that yet. It will get confusing.
No, no. What?
Yeah,
That's not my
it
question.
will get
Question
confusing.
is like,
Yeah. So,
so my question is, at what point did you think that it was not necessary for you to continue with that path of plant medicine and you just wanted to do the brainwave and things like that?
well, again, that stopped 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm asking is not the time. I'm asking what changed in your psyche, in you, for
What
you to
changed my psyche?
for you
I
to
just never had a
realize
use.
for you
I
to
just,
realize that you don't need it anymore, kind of a thing.
I I couldn't tell you. It's just a lack of motivation to do, really. It's not a decision like I don't want to do plant medicine anymore. It's not like that. It's just that just never had the desire to do them.
Okay,
You
so
know
it
what I
was
mean?
like more
Yeah,
like
it's more like
intuition.
that. Yeah, it wasn't a conscious decision. I didn't say to myself, you know what? I'm not gonna do I'm not gonna do plant medicine anymore. It wasn't like that. No.
Okay, okay, so it was more like
It,
an
yeah.
intuitive.
Yeah. It's just more I just don't have the motivation to do it. Yeah.
Okay, I see. And then
Yeah.
let's get to the brainwave. I mean, okay, I'll let you finish your story. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, where was I? I can't even remember. Where did I
Yeah,
leave
so
off?
yeah, yeah, let's get to the brainwave because I think that's your main expertise right now. So let's get to that. Uh, as in, uh, how has it changed your life, and what kind of services and offerings you offer to people now to change their life? So maybe let's start with like how it has changed your life, the brainwave and hemisync, and I mean the binaural beats and all that stuff.
Um, how did it change my life? Well, it's a combination of different things. Um, in one sense, I can't say that it changed anything at all because it's not the meditation, brainwave entrainment, or plant medicine and stuff that changes you. If you're looking at it from a non-dual standpoint, you
Mm,
already are who you are, right?
yeah.
You're just having a journey of opening, of realizing yourself, but there's nothing really to realize because you've always been that. So that gets kind of confusing. So if someone asks me, what did you do? What happened that changed your life? I'm like, well, my whole entire life had a role in that. From the
Yeah, I
time of
mean,
the Big Bang had a role in
obviously,
that. So
obviously, there's
yeah,
many
that's
aspects,
yeah.
but
But
yeah,
I just want to say though, the reason why some of these questions are hard to answer is because if I gave an answer, it would be misleading. So it's hard for me to say that brainwave entrainment made changes in my life. You know what I mean? But if I was trying to make it simple and said, what did brainwave entrainment do to change my life?
yeah, that's what I'm asking you.
Um, it, but yeah, but it's a holistic thing. So
Mm,
brainwave entrainment has its purpose, but my interaction with you also has the same
Yeah, yeah. I
purpose.
mean, obviously, we are
You know what I mean? Yeah.
we
So
do
it's
multiple. I mean, we do multiple things at the same
yeah, we're
time.
doing multiple things. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So I don't
but
want to say I don't want to make it look like that
no,
this
no. I
one
mean,
thing
what I'm asking is
made this
what? Okay,
huge
let's put it
changes.
another way. What is the
Okay.
importance of binaural beats and the brainwave entrainment and neurofeedback, all that stuff? What is the importance you feel that's in your life, and how it can change other people's lives?
Another tough question. Um, you change your life. So if you're listening to a binaural beat, especially low carrier frequency of binaural beat, all you're doing is creating more clarity so that you can make, if you want to call it a change, so that that change can be made. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not really the binaural beat itself that's doing that. It's you gaining clarity so that if you have more awareness, those changes can be made. So one can make the argument that brainwave entrainment is doing that. You can say that, but it's just part of the whole recipe. So when you meditate, even if it's not brainwave entrainment, if you're meditating, whatever that meditation practice is, if it's a good practice, you're trying to gain awareness, and then the more awareness you have, the more changes will take place.
So what is your
So
recipe?
it's probably more like that.
Let's talk about the recipe then, because I mean, it's obvious that only one thing doesn't change a life. It's a combination of things. So what has been that
A
recipe?
combination of It's a combination of everything. So if someone asked me what's my recipe, I couldn't tell you what that is. I just do whatever I feel like doing in the moment. So I do my brainwave entrainment every day for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I work out. I do some yoga from time to time if I feel like doing it. Now I do a lot of neurofeedback training, but I only started doing neurofeedback training, I think it was 7 years ago, uh, which I did for a period of time. And I only just got back into it last year. Sorry, the year before last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of different things. So the relationships that I have made it would contribute to that. My work in nonprofit would contribute to that. My time in comedy would contribute to that. All the interactions that's happening within my brain from the time that all contribute to that. The psychedelics plays a huge role in that as well. If anything, if I had to answer that question in a simple way, I had to go back to that story. So after meeting that gentleman who told me about Osho, and I started working towards trying to achieve whatever Osho was talking about, that day that I was doing my brainwave and train, because at this point I'm trying to create my own,
Mm-hmm.
right? So at this moment, I'm using the same brainwave stuff that I was using that I ordered back in 2003, I believe it was. Um, I was using those low carrier frequency brainwaves with psilocybin.
Mm-hmm.
So that day was the moment that everything changed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So one could say from that perspective that it could have been the work of the brainwave entrainment and then experimenting with psilocybin, because that experience didn't happen the previous times I did psilocybin. The psilocybin in combination with the brainwave entrainment definitely made it stronger. It definitely created more miraculous peak experiences. But it was that day where everything changed. So this was back in 2008.
Right.
Yeah. So in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
if I had to if I had to put that somewhere, it would have been that moment. So one can argue that was the combination of all those things and everything that created that one
Yeah.
moment. So that day, my life changed.
Okay.
Well, I don't even want to say that, but to say a significant change where
Yeah, like a
I started to see
milestone.
things
I
from a
mean,
non-dual
see,
standpoint.
obviously, yeah, we have milestones in our lives where we go through
Yeah,
different phases. So that was one of your milestone, I understand.
yeah, yeah. But that milestone would have happened if it wasn't for all the previous stuff, and so
Yeah, I mean,
that was
obviously,
that milestone that day did it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just bear with me because I'm
No, no, no.
very
I
by the way how
understand.
my brain
I'm
thinks.
like that
I
too.
can't. Yeah. So
No, no.
yeah.
I'm laughing because I go through similar thing because
Oh, do
we
you?
are like multidimensional beings we are,
Yeah.
and we cannot just say like what makes me happy. Like I cannot just say one thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
And if I am in a bad mood, I'm not just only in a bad mood. I'm in many different moods, and they could be positive, they could be negative. So if someone asks me, "How are you feeling?" I don't know how to answer the question because I'm feeling everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, yeah, that's
You
why.
know what I mean? Yeah. So that's why it gets complicated. So it's like when someone asks me a question, I don't know how to answer it because so many different things are happening at the same time.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yeah, so it's weird.
I mean, that's one reason I started this podcast is because these spiritual
Oh,
concepts are hard to put it in words sometimes, and I,
very difficult to put in words.
yeah, yeah. So we try our best. I mean, uh,
Yeah.
so
And the moment I speak, I'm like, oh man, that was misleading. I should have said this. I should have said that. And it's like, yeah, so people are gonna have to pick and choose what they want out of that.
yeah, yeah,
So like
yeah,
when it comes to like what was the recipe, I'm like, I don't know what the recipe is. I just know it's a combination of everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But I guess there's a number of things that we follow that are our preferences
yeah. I mean, basically, it's a
or something,
blueprint.
right?
It's your blueprint. Like I have my own blueprint to how I got here. You have your own blueprint,
Yeah.
as in what worked for you. But that doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else. But we're just sharing ideas about what worked for you, that so that
Yeah.
it might work for somebody else as well. If not the whole thing, at least some pieces of that, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, so now we can get to like what other offerings that you have, what services that you offer to people, you know.
Well, I offer a number of things. Well, the main thing that I offer, of course, is I created a my own low carrier frequency called Energy,
Mhm.
uh, uh, Energy meditation, which at the time when I came up with this idea, well, I always wanted to make my own version of it, right? So a person from another company told me how I can make them. So I took the information that I gathered from that individual, and I started to do my own experiments. And I would pass them out to people. I would give CDs out to people when we were using CDs at the time. I would give them out to people, and I would get feedback, and I would make changes to my recipe, if you want to call it my audio recipe. As time went on, after I had my major experience in 2008, where I had my first experience in Korea, um, I wanted to see if there was some kind of mathematical equation or something that I can add that was different to my version of the low carrier frequencies. So at some point, I was introduced to the works of a mathematician by the name of Marco Rodin. And Marco Rodin has this theorem in regards to what he calls vortex-based mathematics, which is based on an algorithm, which is the same algorithm throughout the whole entire universe. So that algorithm is 124875. So
Mhm.
I started looking into his work, watched all his videos,
Mhm.
took a lot of notes, did a lot of experiments, trying to figure out how can I apply this mathematical theorem to sound wave entrainment. It took me about 2 years to figure out. But at one point, I was at home in my very room that I'm in right now. I was working out, and as I was picking up the weights, it hit me. I realized how I was able to use his mathematics in regards to brainwave entrainment. So this is back in 2010. 2010.
Mhm.
Once I figured that out, I applied the mathematics to the sound frequencies that are used in brainwave entrainment, and that
Mhm.
became Energy. Over
Mhm.
years of experimentation and just trying to tweak it a little bit here and there, it became Energy.
Mhm.
I started using Energy as my main practice at this point. So I put aside my old program, and I started using Energy on a regular basis. And
Mhm.
I started passing the stuff out to other people. And throughout the years, many different changes have happened with the many different individuals that have been using it, and people are still using it now from my original group back in 2012. Back in 2012, so a lot of positive things came out of that. A few of those people had their own spiritual awakenings as well. I'm still in contact with all those people. They also try to follow some of them tried to follow my recipe with the combination of doing brainwave entrainment every day, and then on occasion doing brainwave entrainment with a psychedelic,
Mhm.
that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of good things and negative things came out of that, because of course things come up.
Yeah.
Dark night of the soul and all that stuff can come up.
Yeah.
Um, but overall, it created a lot of positive change. Later on, I expanded it. I expanded the program where I started to create different types of energy products that public actually don't even have access to yet. I just haven't got around to it. But the one that I currently do, the one that I do that is available to the ones that everyone else is using is where it's probably too much of the math. People are not going to probably follow what I'm talking about, but it's pretty much taking you from the alpha brainwave state, which is a faster brainwave state. It slows you down into a theta state and then brings you down to a delta state and keeps you in a delta state for 40 minutes. So this is the one that most people who are using the program or have used the program in the past are accustomed to. But I made other ones where, you stay in alpha for a longer period of time. You stay in theta for 10 minutes and delta for 10 minutes, or alpha for 10 minutes, theta for 40 minutes, delta for 10 minutes, and so on. I made ones where you're in beta and then you're in gamma for 40 minutes, or you're in lambda for 40 minutes. So I've made different types of versions of this energy soundtrack using the same algorithm of the 124875. So the 124875 never changes, but there are a million ways of using those numbers, which helps me to use them in the different types of energies that I made. I also made energy products that are lower than delta and lower than epsilon. So there's delta, there's epsilon, and there's other frequencies that are lower than that. I also made soundtracks that are much lower than the ones that people are currently using, which are experimental use. People don't even have access to that. Only I use those deeper levels and so on. I even made ones higher than lambda, so frequencies in the beyond 200 hertz and so on, to experiment. I don't really recommend those, but I've done them. So to make a long story short, uh, so now there's Energy. Energy is the product, whatever. People around the world are using it now. So people all over, in probably 14 countries, are using Energy. Um, but for me, if I had to go with what you're saying in regards to the change that happened in my life, the biggest change that took place, probably hence why I just never bothered with psychedelics anymore. Just to clear up the story, um, back in 2019, I received an email about a spiritual guru who was coming to Toronto.
Mm,
His name is Paramahamsa Vishwananda. So I
mm,
heard about this guy, a spiritual guru from Germany. So
mm,
I got this email saying that he's coming to Toronto to give darshan. I knew what darshan was, but I've never received darshan from anyone before.
mm.
For those who don't know what darshan is, some people may compare it to like a Kundalini Shaktipat type of thing, but it's really more of a blessing.
Oh, yeah.
Darshan is a blessing, which means to look into the eyes of a divine being or that
Yes,
sort.
right.
So he comes to town. I go and I meet him. This is the fall of 2019.
Mm,
Met him in person. He looked in my eyes for 20 seconds. He put his hands on my head, and I walked away. I felt a little something in my body, and I walked away from after he did what he did. I just left. I felt some sensations in my body that were very similar to some of my experiences that I had with 5-MeO DMT.
mm,
Um, I can also say that those sessions of 5-MeO DMT also had huge changes in my life as well. What those changes are, difficult to explain. But anyway, I met with Paramahamsa Vishwananda, looked in my eyes for 20 seconds. I walked away. A few months later, I had the greatest spiritual awakening I've ever had in my entire life. Till this very day, nothing's ever matched that. Um, I would say that moment, which was December 14th of 2019, is what really changed it for me. Yeah,
Right.
if anything. Of course, it's a combination of everything because in that experience, there was no beginning, no end. There was no past, present, or future. There was no cause and effect, yet there was. Um, all time was happened in that moment. And in that realization, there was a realization that none of those people or any of those things had anything to do with this um, realization. That realization was always there. The realization is creating the story of a man named Paramahamsa Vishwananda who gave me darshan. But to make it easier for the audience, received darshan. Months later, that happened.
Okay.
If I'm going to make
Yeah.
it easy, if I'm going to give it
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
a
No, that's
beginning,
good.
middle, and an end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's what did it, and it's there till this very day of the moment that it happened on that day. I was just putting on Energy, put on my headphones Saturday afternoon, and boom, everything happened in that moment. Past, present, and future, um, both God and man.
Mm,
Everything happened where I was, and still am, put up at a hun in that moment. So that's what I could say did it for me. So at that moment, from that point on, I lost the urge to do like other like psychedelics and things of that sort,
Yeah.
if anything. And I'm still for it. Like if someone passed me some DMT and said, "Hey, you," I'd probably still do it. I don't know, but it's not something like I'd be like, no, I'm beyond that. I don't think it's anything like that. But I just never had the urge. Just like when I had that experience back in 2008, I lost the urge for eating meat. I haven't eaten meat since that day.
Yeah.
So like things like that. So yeah.
Okay. So I have two questions before we end. So one is, how would you define spiritual awakening for you? I mean, it's different for different people. And okay, let's just start from there. And the other I wanted to ask you is like, why do you, like you said, you don't feel the need to go with the medicine anymore, but why do you think you still need the uh, binaural beats and the brainwave entrainment stuff? You know, like why do you?
Can I answer that first?
Yeah, sure, sure, yeah.
I don't have the need to do binaural beats. I just do it because I like doing it. Yeah, so it's just like how I like to go out and walk and do all those other things. I want to continue my meditation practice. I don't believe that a person should just end their meditation practice because they had a big turning point. The Buddha continued his meditation after his enlightenment. So
So it's
that's
more
that's the
like,
philosophy I
do you
take.
think it's like maintenance of the state? Do you think that or no? Or it's just a
No,
habit?
no, I just do it. It became a habit.
Okay,
I wake up every morning. I just do it. Yeah,
okay,
so
all right.
it's more of a habit. Yeah, so I don't have a need to do it. Um, if you check my my brain measurements and results and stuff like that, I'm still stuck. I don't want to use the word stuck, but I'm still in that deep delta state. Majority of my brainwave, majority of my state uh, takes up about 83% of my other brainwaves. So when they did test on me on my brain, it looks like I'm awake but still asleep in a sense
Right.
because the part of my brain, especially the back part of the brain, is producing this large amount of delta.
Yeah.
Um, but there's still theta, there's still alpha there, and there's still
So
beta.
yeah,
But there's a large amount of delta in the back part of my brain.
I mean, okay, yeah, just very quick question before you get to the second question is like, do you think if you stop doing the brainwave entrainment and binaural beats and like, do you think you would still be able to maintain that state that you're talking about, the state of awakening or non-duality, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I believe it's permanent. I don't think it'll ever go away. So if I stop doing brainwave entrainment today, that would still be there. Brainwave entrainment, low carrier frequency brainwave entrainment is meant to be permanent.
Oh,
We're not looking for temporary trait. We're not looking for temporary. Well, of course, you're going to get temporary states,
yeah.
but we're looking for traits, right? So that becomes a trait. So if I stop doing brainwave entrainment today, that will still last for the rest of my life.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
And
because I have 13 levels to this thing. I finished all 13 levels, so but I just continue to do it
oh,
because when I wake up, that's the first thing I do. I wake up 6 o'clock in the morning. I do my hour of meditation.
yeah, I guess it depends on uh at what level or how much people have done. I'm talking about like just like an average person who wants to do it. That doesn't
Hmm.
mean if they do it for 1 year or 6 months, they're going to be in that state forever. It depends on how advanced they get to, or what are the different factors that people can consider before getting into it. Let's say somebody wants to get into it. So, what are the different things they should consider, as in like the freak, like how many minutes every day, or things of that nature, or does it just depend on different people? It's different for different people.
Well, with something like energy, it's designed so that every time you do it for an hour, you're getting the equivalent of 8 hours per day, 8, 9, 10 hours per day. All right. So that's how that's designed. The average person, if they're seeking spiritual awakening, the average person is putting in 3 hours a day of traditional meditation. All
Okay.
right. I don't personally want to sit there every day for 3 hours a day because I get only because I have a busy day. I got a lot of things going on. So I like the idea of putting in the 1 hour and I work with that. So, but that could be different for different people. Some people
Yeah.
may like, no, I want to sit there, do a traditional meditation practice and sit there for 3 hours a day every day until I break through. That's great. I support that. But for me, right, I'm working on projects. I'm working on my second book. I'm in the midst of opening up a nonprofit organization. I don't have 3 hours a day to do
Yeah.
that. But what I can do is I'm in a permanent state of meditation now. So even when I'm not meditating, I'm still meditating.
Well,
Actually, to answer your question too, because there have been hundreds of breaking points for me. So it's hard for me to pin down each point. But there was a moment when I was actually teaching a class. I was facilitating one of my programs. It was called Nine for the Mind, where I was actually trying to teach the vortex-based mathematics to high school kids. And one day on a Thursday afternoon, I was trying to teach this stuff to these kids. Uh, I realized that my state dropped. I realized I fell into a meditative state that stayed there till this very day. It happened on that day. It wasn't anything extravagant. It was
mm,
no big awakening or anything like that. It wasn't anything like that. It was just I was talking and my state just changed. It just went into this deeper type meditative trance.
yeah.
And it's been there ever since. So that's
Mm,
another moment that was more of a subtle type of
mm,
event, but it's
yeah.
one of the moments that I remember of the moments that I can recall that I can say those were one of the moments that played a role in changing my life.
Okay, great,
Right.
great.
And I'm still in that state now. So if I wouldn't need to necessarily meditate anymore. But I got into the habit of it. I just love doing it. So I just do it. So I put in my hour every day as a discipline. Yeah. There's benefits to that by staying disciplined and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
now let's get to
And
the
you had your other
ultimate,
question.
yeah, the ultimate question, and we can end with this, and you can, answer it whichever way, because I'm sure, there's many ways to, and different people experience awakening through different ways. I think you've already answered that in between, like what was your experience like, awakening experience like, and how you maintain it and sustain it. But in general,
I
like,
didn't really answer the question, but it's because it's so difficult to explain it. But
I
yeah,
mean,
I
that's
think I
why I'm
probably gave
asking.
the gist of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you now again, is what, how would you define spiritual awakening in general from your life's experiences? How would you define it? And what are some ways people can start? Like, let's say somebody starting on this path, what are some ways they can start from?
How would I define it? I wouldn't know how to define it. Awakening, from my standpoint, is the reason why I can't define it because you're not the one who's awakening,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Like we're just the character, right? So we're not the ones that are awakening. So the thing that the person comes to, because again, when I come back from the experience, I'm only giving an interpretation, a limited interpretation. So the thing that quote unquote awakens has always been awakened.
Mhm.
So you, the individual, in most cases, you fall into the back burner. You fall into the background while
Mm,
this thing comes into the forefront.
yeah.
But what happened to me on December 14th of 2019, that's not what happened either. There was no me in the background.
Yeah.
Even that went away. So to describe awakening, and there were many different types of awakenings, as you were saying, and people have them differently.
Yeah.
Um, but there are different types for different stages.
Hmm.
The one that I'm referring to right now in this moment, because I had many types, um, is it calls into the category of absolute monism. So everything of the absolute happens in that moment. So I would say that the absolute realizes itself as the absolute,
Okay. And
but there's
if,
nothing for the absolute to realize because there's nothing outside of it.
yeah,
So the absolute, becomes aware of the absolute, but there's
yeah,
nothing for the absolute to become aware of because it's always been that, and there's no you to experience it.
yeah, yeah, I know that's
So
where the words, yeah, that's where the words cannot answer those. I understand.
yeah.
So
But
if,
if I had to make it easier for people,
yeah,
um, you have to disappear. You have to dissipate so
yeah,
that this thing becomes not become because it already is it, but it realizes itself, and
hmm.
in that moment,
I know, I know.
I
I think, I mean,
don't know
Buddhism,
where to go with it. It's just yeah, it's just the
let me,
most
yeah, I
incredible
think
thing a person
Buddhism,
could ever go through.
yeah, what from my experience, I think Buddhism comes very close to non-duality that at least from
Hmm.
what I know, and what they call it no mind. I mean, that's just the English interpretation of that experience. But I think
No
that's,
mind.
yeah, the no mind where, I mean, we can do it through meditation or medicine or anything like that. But I think,
Hmm.
at least for me, the trick has been how to sustain it, because it's very easy to experience that state. But then how do I keep sustaining it without meditation, without the medicine, or without even like thinking about spiritual growth? Because that becomes an addiction in itself, like keep learning new things.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
But
how.
it's the character that's getting addicted.
What's
You know,
that? Oh,
it's
the
not us.
character.
It's not. It's the character. Yeah, it's the character that's getting addicted. It's not. It's not the ultimate self or the no mind. Um,
Yeah, of
from my
course.
standpoint, it doesn't matter. Yeah, from my standpoint, it doesn't matter if the individual got addicted to it. That's probably that's that person's path.
Right.
So even if we say don't do A, B, and C because you don't want the ego to become addicted to it, if the person's if it's the person's path, they're going to become addicted anyway. You know what I mean? Nothing we say would necessarily stop that because even the very person who said it was addicted at one point until they realized that they didn't need to anymore because you know that part opened up for them. So it's a trap that everyone falls into anyway. Even though it's our job to tell them not to fall for the trap, but they're going to
Yeah.
fall for the trap anyway.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
bound to happen, right? Yeah. So, um, what was your question? Shit.
I think
Um,
you answered it already. Is that
did I answer it?
the awakening? How do you define awakening? And I think, yeah, I mean, if you have anything to add, you can go ahead. But I think I,
I could go on for I could go on for days about it. Even though it's confusing, yet it's so clear. So pretty much, like you see how I use the term the no mind, right? So
mm,
let's call that anatta or something, right? You can call that anatta. And from my standpoint, anatta is the same exact thing as Brahman. It's just in this case, if someone uses Brahman or Brahman, they're talking about the absolutes. Whereas if you talk to a Buddhist and they're talking about no mind, they're talking about this emptiness, this sacred divine void, sunnata. From my
yeah,
standpoint, both exactly the same. It's just when one comes back, one will interpret it depending on their gender, their culture, their philosophy, their stage of development.
right,
So when someone comes back, even if 100 people had the ultimate truth and had the ultimate peak experience, the 100 people would come back and tell it 100 different ways, and all of them are right and all of them are wrong.
right.
Because as you know, as we're both saying, that words can't explain this thing, but they're all right, they're all wrong, and all I can do is take those philosophies and take whatever I want from them and see, use
Yeah,
it as a recipe, as we're whatever, and see if that will work for me.
yeah,
And then you realize that the recipe had nothing to do with it. Your ultimate self or the no self created that illusion that you were working towards this goal. So in that moment, there's a laughter that may come out of the individual because they realize in that moment that everything was just a cosmic joke, and that
yeah,
the very thing that I was seeking, there was really nothing to seek. I've
yeah,
only pretended to do the act of seeking that led to this conclusion, but it didn't lead to that conclusion because the conclusion is the only thing that ever existed.
yeah.
Everything that led to that conclusion was the illusion of me seeking something that I was always that I've always been, and that's
Yeah,
why it gets so tricky
that was the story that we make up in our mind
that
to
we make up. Well,
ex-
not in our mind, not in our mind per se. The same ultimate mind is making up the
yeah,
story
I mean the ego's mind.
for its own enjoyment.
I mean
But
there is
the ego is not real either. The ego is also an illusion. So the ego is
I
not
know, but
doing
it's
it.
you're talking about like,
The no mind is making up the illusion of an ego
yeah,
that
of course,
exists.
everything is
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
consciousness, but we're talking about individual person now. Obviously, we are individual people, right? So we're not everything. I mean, we are everything, but we also an individual person. So we're talking from that individual person's point of view. We experience that oneness, but then we keep coming back to our individual person and removing those filters which are stopping us from being in that state of no mind. That's how I would define it.
But the individual person is the distraction because there
I
really is
mean,
no
even if
individual
it's a
person.
distraction, but we still have to be
That's
aware
the
of.
illusion, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But we don't.
Even if it's
But
an
yes,
illusion,
and we don't.
No, no,
Yeah,
what I'm
but we don't
saying
like
is,
it,
even
that's why
if
it's so
it,
tricky
no, no, what I'm
because we
saying
don't.
is, even if it's an illusion, we still have to deal with it. It's not that, oh, it's illusion, it's gone. It's, we still have to deal with it,
I
right?
hear you.
So that's where I think, for me at least,
Within the
Buddhism,
story, yes, within the story, yeah,
yeah, yeah, of course, it's all a story, but we can't just say
yeah.
it's all. I mean, that's why some people say it's just an illusion. So why bother to get into even anything, meditation, it's all an illusion anyway. So then,
And even if they said that, but even if they said that though, they're still right from that point of view because no one needs to do anything. But while you're here creating this illusion, it may be that person's path to do nothing or to do
yeah,
something.
yeah, there's
Because
no,
at the end of the day, at the moment of death or whatever, you're going to
yeah,
become that, or you realize that you're that anyway,
yeah, yeah,
right?
in that
So
sense,
that's why, yeah.
there's no right or
So
wrong.
it's
That
tricky.
sense,
There's no really no right or wrong in this because it's because the whole thing is the TV show, the script that we're
yeah.
creating.
I
When I say
mean,
we, of course, you
one,
know that we're talking about this ultimate self
yeah, I
that's
mean,
creating it, but
once,
it's not really creating it because there's no time. Time is also part of the illusion.
yeah,
So that's why it gets
I
tricky.
think once
So that's why
we,
explaining what an awakening is difficult because it's everything and it's
yeah,
nothing at all at the same
so
time.
once we know that it's an illusion, then it's easy to get out of that. But I think most people, at least even for me, the concept of the matrix, or the illusion is getting to the point of knowing that it's an illusion or it's a matrix is the point for me to transcend the matrix.
But
So
who gets to the point where they realize that it's an illusion because that's the illusion too. The
yeah,
individual
I mean,
itself can't
that's
get to
just,
that point.
I mean, that, yeah, that's where, that's, I think you're talking about,
Yeah, the individual can't do that,
yeah, you're
right?
talking
Everything is
about,
as it is.
yeah, yeah, but you're talking about like advanced levels of non-duality. We're just talking about a normal average person who's maybe in the spiritual path or starting
Yeah.
out, where it's just like, because words can get confusing, like who's asking all those things, but we're just talking from an individual perspective and our paths. Like, we cannot say, okay, you should follow this and you get to this, but we don't want to confuse people. That's why I want to just make it clear that, at least, I mean, I'm not saying what you're saying doesn't make sense. I'm saying we have our perspectives, and people are free to follow whatever path they want to, right? But we can only share what brought us to that point of what we call awakening, right? But if we use too many words like there's no awakening, there's no illusion, then I feel we're not doing justice to the uh, teaching, because I feel I'm a teacher and you're a teacher. But if we get to a point where we like,
Well, I'm pretending to be a teacher because it doesn't matter what the teaching is. The teaching, regardless, no matter how genuine that teaching is, it still doesn't serve a purpose because no teachings lead you to that.
yeah, in a way,
So
yeah,
that so you know what I mean? This is just a pass. This is just a passerby. Me teaching is just part of the act that I'm doing. So whether I made up some bullshit or I try to tell the exact truth from my genuine perspective, that
mm,
will not help the student anyway.
okay,
Right. So so like I may be saying, don't quote me on this, I may be saying it doesn't matter what that person does. If
mm,
that person is supposed to reach that realization, they're going to reach it anyway.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
that's
But
true.
someone has to create a story. So the story could be I'm going to follow Buddhism and I'm going to do A, B, and C and do this for a period of time to get to
Yeah,
this. And then they get it and they say, oh gosh, Buddhism, this is what Buddhism the practice did for me. But it wasn't the Buddhist practice that did it. They were supposed to hit it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just that was the story created that looked like it led to that moment.
yeah,
Right. But the moment would have happened regardless, no matter what situation they were in.
yeah,
It just happened through
yeah,
that particular path, right? So whether we meet bad teachers or good teachers, because a lot of people have some things to say about certain teachers.
mm,
From my standpoint, it's neither helpful or the opposite of that. If the person is supposed to hit it, they'll hit it. Whether it's in this lifetime or the next one or the one after that,
mm,
it just is what it is. So when people ask me, Did you do all that that led to that? My answer would be, if I was using cause and effect, everything that everyone is doing. If I'm
Yeah.
using cause and effect in this example, everything that everyone's doing from the beginning of time led to
Yeah.
this event,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because I could have never existed without a Big Bang,
Yeah. That's
right?
correct.
So everything that happened, and anything that happened prior to that, so everyone and everything, every food that I've eaten, every conversation I've ever had, every disagreement I've ever had with a person, every failure in a relationship, every moment of sex, every moment of orgasm, every racist comment that was made towards me, all that stuff played a role. If I'm using cause and effect, played
Yeah.
a role in that manner. So it's not just an individual intention and action that took place and that allowed that to happen. Everything that's happening in the entire universe led to that moment of the universe itself waking up to itself.
That's
So when the
true.
person does wake up, the person comes back and tries to give a story about what led to the awakening, I would say I did low carrier frequency brainwave entrainment along with psychedelics, along with the teachings of Osho, along with the teachings of Muji, and along with the psychological development of integral theory with Ken Wilber and blah 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 with Andrew Cohen and da 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 that led to that moment, or when Paramahamsa Vishwananda looked into my eyes for 20 seconds and boom, and then when it happens and you realize there is no Paramahamsa Vishwananda.
Yeah.
Right? He was just another character within the stream that allowed that when you finally wake up and you look and you say, "Gosh, I made up the whole entire thing. Not just my life, but the whole entire universe in action. I made that up."
Yeah.
Yet, in the moment I'm saying that, there is no I that makes it up because the I itself is making no action towards it because
Yeah.
there is no time and space or within that moment because time and space is included in that. But in that moment, there is no time and space. There is no cause and effect.
Yeah.
It just happens. So the very moment it happens, it's laughing at itself, saying,
Yeah.
"Oh gosh!" And I believe that Paramahamsa Vishwananda woke me up to this. And it's like, well, no, that's just part of the story.
Yeah.
And Paramahamsa Vishwananda knows that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
playing the role as a spiritual guru who looks into people's eyes, like hundreds of people every day. If that's what it takes for someone to wake up to itself, to realize,
Yeah.
oh, snap. I am the ground of all being. I am Prabrahan itself. And everything that's ever happened in the entire universe and entire existence
Mm.
is my own doing. Yet it's not my doing at all because I have nothing to do with it because there's no time and space. Even myself as Prabrahan doesn't exist.
That's
Yet that very non-existence exists. If
yeah.
you look at non-dual from a non-dual standpoint, non-existence and existence
Mm.
becomes one. So the very moment in that experience, you realize me as Parabrahan, do I exist? Yes, no, maybe, and maybe not. And all those things becomes this one thing. Hence why I exist as Parabrahan.
Great. I think yeah.
So that's why
Yeah. Yeah.
it
No.
gets so
Yeah.
confusing when you try to talk to the regular person. It's like I don't know how to explain this to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. That's
It's
why.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm saying some of these are advanced concepts. We don't want to blow up people's minds.
Maybe
Yeah.
blow their minds too soon. It'd be too
Yeah.
much,
Too
right?
soon. Yeah. Let them take the time to to get their minds blown.
Let them digest some of the stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So yeah.
All right. Thanks, Morgan, for joining. And maybe, yeah, we can do this again to get more.
Of
Let's see
course.
what how people react to this podcast. We can read the comments and see if people have more questions. But thanks again for joining, and I
Mhm.
appreciate it. And I hope you have a nice day. And I hope also you enjoyed this podcast.
Oh yeah, I love it. I like this type of stuff, especially um because sometimes you do podcasts and sometimes it could be cookie cutter. And
Right.
in other cases where it's like, let's get these ideas out, no matter how crazy they may sound. Let's get these ideas out. Let's see where it lies, where it lies flat. Like you know what I mean? And we go back, the two of us walk away from it, we think about it, and like, wow, let's do that again from another angle or some point. I enjoy this type of stuff, even if I have nothing to say about
All right. Sounds
it.
good, Morgan. You have a great day. Talk to you soon. All right. Namaste,
Talk to
bro.
you soon, brother.
All right. Bye.
Namaste. Take care.
Take care.